Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont, and I'm coming at you with a review for the HBO Max series UZUMAKI by by Junji Ito. And yeah, I gotta admit, this series wasn't that good. And I don't know if this is because I'm used to those stories going at like a much quicker pace. Because, when you're reading the mangas, you read at your own pace. And I think it took me like 30 minutes to read the Uzumaki story. Where watching the show, it's broken down into like 4 episodes, roughly 30 to 40 minutes each, depending on the content. And I mean, hell, they might not even be that long. They may have just felt that long because it moves at a snail's pace. No pun intended. Uh, Considering there's snail people in that. But it's just one of those shows that started really strong. And evidently what had happened was they blew their entire budget on the first episode with the animation. Because that's the episode with the spiral girl where like her scar on her forehead turns into a spiraling black hole that sucks her and a couple of people around her in. And that was like, it was amazing. Like animation wise, it was like very detailed, very interesting. The story, though, as I said, just moves so slow. Like this probably could have been 2 episodes or like a 1 hour short film. I don't know how long the original short film was. They came out in 2000. I never actually watched that one. I might go back and watch it, maybe and see if it tells the story better and more succinctly. I might even do a comparison video, a cinema showdown kind of thing to see, which Uzumaki actually holds up, which one's more true to the manga. I mean, this one was very true to the manga. It had that same ambiguous ending that doesn't answer any questions. Maybe some spoiler warners coming in, or spoiler warning coming in. I am going to talk about the plot a little bit and reveal some things that happen. Basically, the main story is about a guy who goes to school outside of this town that he lives in, who's dating a girl that lives in the town. And he is the first person to realize this town is cursed by the spiral. His dad has become so obsessed with the spiral. He's got to have everything has to be a spiral. He eventually kills himself by turning himself into a spiral in like this crate somehow. He's like twisted up and mangled. Drives his mom insane. She gets to the point where she's seeing spirals everywhere and she has to like destroy them. Like she cuts off her fingertip. Or all of her fingertips because they're spirals. She stabs out her ears because of the spiral. One of the organs inside your ear is like a little perfect spiral. And it's all true to the story. The girl's hair turns into a spiral. It mesmerizes people. So the person who wants to be the center of attention of the school, her hair turns into a spiral. She ends up like dying because she's obsessed with being the center of attention. So she goes to the center of town and just sits there on a pole until she dies or something. I don't know. It's weird. And it basically, it spirals out of control and goes pretty much down the spiral. And yeah, that's all the spiral puns I have for right now. It just got boring fast. And I was like, man, I don't remember the manga being this boring. It's been a while since I read it, but the show just moves so slowly that I was like, whew, I'm having trouble staying awake. And partly because it's slow, partly because, I watch it when I get home after a long day at work and I'm, watching this moderately paced anime at 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was just not that entertaining. And I didn't like it that much. The ending made me almost hate it because it was like, I was hoping they were going to like kind of steer a little bit away from the manga and maybe explain the ending, explain what the spiral structure is at the end, explain why the town has to be built in a spiral to unlock the underground chambers. Because basically what happens is at the end they're trying to escape, and the people that are trying to hide from the spiraling tornadoes that are ravaging the town are all packing to the building so rapidly that they merge into this giant like uh, Lovecraftian horror where they're just a mass of like wiggling arms and heads on like long snaking bodies, and they're reconstructing the houses around them because they've overgrown the houses. And this stranger shows up. He came with a group of people to help. The group of people he comes with, they all go mad after eating human snail meat, and they're just obsessed with killing human snails and eating the meat. Where the dude that was leading the party originally was just like, well, we got to rebuild these spiral houses, so he just starts doing that, which is kind of funny. You know, he's a stranger in town, shit's going crazy, and the first thing he's like is, I need to get a job, I got to find work to do, which I was wondering if there was some sort of allegory there. I didn't really dig into it and didn't find anything, but I didn't dig into it, so it's probably why I didn't find anything. But the main crew of people, like, you know, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, and her brother, and this other woman, try to flee the town by going into the mountains, because anyone that tries to escape by boat gets sucked into a spiral water spout that suddenly pops up. Anybody that tries to fly out, their plane gets sucked into a spiral tornado. So they're like, all right, let's go to the mountains. But the mountains lead them in a circular path where they just always come back to the same way. And they find this out by, while they're leading, they're going down a trail in one direction, and they run into other people coming the other direction, and they're like, oh, what are you guys doing out here? And they're like, oh, we saw you come up the mountain, so we followed you. And they're like, what happened? Why'd you turn around? They're like, we didn't turn around. We're heading, you know, away from the town. And they're like, well, away from the town is the direction you came from. But when they finally do get back to town, you know, they wander for a couple hours. They come back to town, and that couple hours has actually been a couple years now, because the spiral has affected time differently. I guess, like, the closer towards the center of the spiral, the tighter it gets, the faster time moves. And, like, the further out you get, the slower time moves. So there's probably some sort of, like, Einsteinian, you know, Rosen thing going on there. I'm not sure if that was like something that was meant to be that way, or if it was just a way to advance the plot without having to actually advance the plot. But when they come back, the town is basically a giant spiral that's almost completely built. All the old wooden houses in the town originally have been connected into one long house that leads to the center of town, and that once you get to the center, if you travel the spiral, it unlocks an underground passage that takes you to this ancient spiral structure that basically consumes all the people of the town, and then shuts the town off. The spiral, the madness, the curse, whatever, ends, and the town basically gets destroyed due to nature and time, and a new city that looks exactly the same as the old city arises. And they introduce us to two new characters at the end, but the roles are reversed. The girl is the one that goes out of town and comes back in. She goes out of town for school and comes back into town, and her boyfriend is the one who lives in town and goes to school in town. And it's a metaphor of the cyclical nature of humanity, I guess. But they just leave that whole mystery of what the ancient spiral structure is, why the curse happens. And I guess I should know from, you know, it's pretty much a very like signature thing for Ito to not explain anything and in his stories, and they just kind of happen. And it's almost Kafka-esque, where, you know, Kafka believed that a story should wound the reader. And I almost feel like Junji Ito has that same kind of mentality when it comes to stories. Because you get to the end and you're like, well, you know, you're either annoyed or angry, or you're just at a loss, or you're searching for deeper meaning that might not even be there. Like, you might be applying your own meaning to it. I don't know. But it was just very lackluster. the animation quality kind of like dips with every episode, which I've seen a lot of people complaining about online. And when I heard so many people complaining, I was like, I need to look this up. What's the main reason for this? And it's the budget. They blew the budget on the first episode, because that was like, that's what hooked me. I saw the first episode and I was like, oh man, this is great. Like, I made the mistake of joining in near the end, so I got to binge 3 episodes in a row. So I saw the decline rapidly, but then it was like I had to wait a week for the next episode, or the last one, and then that waiting, and then I watched it and I was like, man, that really just fell off a cliff. And yeah, that's my review. It was very lackluster. I do think I am going to go check out the original 2000 film, so 24 years apart, and see how well they hold up, and see if the original is better than the new, or if it's worse or the same. I don't know. I'm definitely probably going to do a cinema showdown about it. But that's all I have for this video. Belmont out.